How did you go from the Canadian Film Center to becoming a head writer on Canadian Idol? And what does a head writer do? I assume it's like host, you're writing a lot of dialogue for the host and stuff, but I'm sure there's more to it than that.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was if memory serves, it was like the producer that I was working with in my first job at CBC writing interstitials. She ended up working for this company, Insight Productions, and she was a producer on Canadian Idol. And it was actually my wife, Alex, at the time. I didn't even know her. She was the head writer on Canadian Idol. And Daniel Franklin, who was somebody that I met at the Canadian Film Center, he was the second writer. And they discovered, 2 or 3 weeks into the process, that there was a lot of writing in reality TV, which no one knew because it was all new at the time. And they were like, "We need a third writer to keep up with the schedule." It was like two live shows a week, and so they brought me in, and it really was like it's sort of reality TV was always kind of a misnomer because it was supposed to be unscripted or whatever, but the you everyone needed to follow a script. Like when when it's a live show, an entire crew needs to know what's going on. There needs to be structure to it. So it's up to writers to create that blueprint, and then you fill it in, and it's like, yeah, the host is reading off a teleprompter the whole time, and then he's always throwing, Ben Mulroney was always throwing to a video pack, and then the video pack would have his voice on it, and that had to be written it beforehand, right? It was all this it was the most writing I've ever done in my life. It was nonstop. And often when people would ask me, they'd be like, "What do you write? I don't get it." And they would often say, "Do you write what the judges say?" And it was like, that's literally the only thing we don't write. It's like they get paid a lot of money to see what's happening on stage and comment on it. They have like 30 seconds to say something, and it's like, that's their job. Even though they did ask us to write singers for them. And we had to turn them down because we just didn't have time. And there'd always be like a comedy sketch. Like, when I was there, it was like John Doerr was like the comedy co host, and there'd be like stuff with him. And then even with all the hopefuls, that were competing in this, they often needed like we would have the other thing that maybe not everyone knows is that for every live show we would do a rehearsal in the morning, and then we do like a dress rehearsal in the afternoon, and then we would do the live show. And during the rehearsals, there were times where Ben Mulroney would ask the hopefuls questions or something, and they would literally, they were young, they would say yes, and so we as writers we had to kind of go up and go, we kind of need a little bit more from you there. And then they'd be kind of snarky and be like, "What would you like me to say?" And I'm like, "Well, it's not what I want you to say, it's just that, can we dig a little deeper just now and figure it out, and then maybe you can try that in dress rehearsal and see how it goes." And so in a sense, we're if we weren't directly writing something, we're shaping it, right? We're trying to find interest, because I'd be like, "That's interesting, can you talk about that?" Like, it's like, because people would love to know that. So when it's and a lot of times you're noticing what's going on in the background and suggesting stuff to segment producers, like, this is going on, there's a rivalry here, you might want to pay attention to this, so it's all very manipulative and stuff like that. But anyway, so season two, I rose up to the second position because Daniel Franklin went to Los Angeles, and then the third season, Alex left to pursue other things, and so I got the head writer position, which was really great because I think it was kind of like, ooh, who's going to be the head writer? And I had a lot of people rooting for me. I know like John Doerr and Ben Mulroney were like, well, obviously Charles, he's pretty organized, like he could fill this slot, and so I got it. And then I had to hire two writers to work with me, like Vera Santa Maria and Greg Eckler were these two like amazingly talented writers, who I was fortunate enough to get. We were this little three pack, and season three was a blast. And then I was kind of at that point, I was kind of burned out. I was like, it was one of those things where I'm like, I got to do other things because this is going to just, year after year, it's going to be the same kind of spot on my resume and all that. So, and then I realized how burned out I was afterwards because I kind of had I had like a bit of a breakdown afterwards because I looked back on it and I was like 3 seasons of Canadian Idol, two live shows a week. It was so intense. Like the results show nights, that morning we would be one of like a handful of people that would know who was going home that night because we had to write the script and finesse it. And so it was just like there was just so much pressure, and I loved it. but when it was gone, it was like I crashed. It was just like, and then I was like, wow, that was actually, I went through a lot with that show. It was, and then it was, yeah, it's always sort of like picking up the pieces and then figuring out what to do next.